A woman dead in a sealed room, her last words to her twin sister warning her to beware a speckled band. A stepfather with a murderous temper and a taste for the odd and exotic. An investigation carrying us deeper into a decrepit house and a brutal mystery. Welcome to BeFM Drama, where we're presenting part 4 in our 5-part adaptation of The Adventure of the Speckled Band, a classic Sherlock Holmes mystery. Stoke Moran smelt of dust, wood mold, and decay. The foyer at the entrance was cluttered with the disorderly refuse of 400 years of Rolott family history, intermixed with more obscure artifacts, souvenirs from Roylot's years in India and his wider travels in the colonies. I followed Holmes as he ducked a low doorway into a side passage that led to the only inhabitable wing of the house. The corridor was whitewashed, with the bedroom doors opening onto it. Holmes made directly for the room in the middle, which had been Helen's sister's. Helen was waiting inside. It was a homely little room, with a low ceiling and a large fireplace. A brown chest of drawers stood in one corner, a narrow white bed in the other, and a dressing table stood beside the window. These, along with 2 small wicker chairs, were the only furnishings of the room. The wood paneling on the wall was worm-eaten oak, so old and discolored it may have dated to the original construction of the house. Holmes dragged one of the wicker chairs into a corner and sat silently, letting his eyes move all around the room, taking in every detail. After a few moments, he pointed to a thick bell rope hanging down beside the bed, so low the tassel actually brushed against the pillow.
What does that bell communicate with?
It goes into the housekeeper's room.
It looks newer than the other things.
Yes, it was only put there a couple of years ago.
Did your sister ask for it?
No, she never used it. We got what we wanted for ourselves.
It seems unnecessary to put a bell pull there. Excuse me for a moment.
Holmes stared silently for a moment at the bed, then took the bell rope in his hand and gave it a sharp tug.
Why, it's fake!
Won't it ring?
No, it's not even attached to a wire, just fastened to a hook above this little opening for the ventilator. Very interesting.
How absurd! I never noticed that before.
There are 1 or 2 very odd points about this room. For one thing, what fool of a builder would connect a ventilator to another room when he could just as easily open one to the outside?
That ventilator is also new.
Done about the same time as the bell rope?
Yes, there were several small changes made around that time.
Interesting modifications indeed. Dummy bell ropes and ventilators that do not ventilate. With your permission, Miss Stoner, I'd like to continue my investigation in your stepfather's room.
Dr. Grimesby Roylott's bedroom was larger than his stepdaughter's, but just as plainly furnished. A camp bed, a small wooden shelf full of books, mostly medical texts, an armchair, a plain wooden chair against the wall, a round table, and a large iron safe were the main furnishings. Holmes walked round and examined all of these with the keenest interest.
What's in the safe?
My stepfather's business papers.
Oh, you've seen inside then?
Only once, some years ago. I remember it was full of papers.
There isn't a cat in it or anything.
No? What a strange idea.
But look at this.
He pointed to a small saucer of milk that sat on top of the safe.
We don't keep a cat, but there is the cheetah and baboon.
Ah, yes, of course. Well, a cheetah's a very big cat. I can't see a saucer of milk satisfying its appetites. There's one more point I need to determine.
He knelt by the wooden chair against the wall under the ventilator and examined the seat of it with careful attention.
Thank you. That settles it. But hello, here's something interesting.
The thing that had caught his eye was a small leather lash hung on one corner of the bed. The tip of the lash had been tied back in on itself to make a narrow loop on one end.
What do you make of that, Watson?
It's a common enough lash, but I don't understand why it would be tied.
Ah, it's a wicked world. But when a clever man turns his brain to crime, it is the worst of all. I think I've seen enough.
Holmes turned to Helen Stoner, and I have never seen his face so grim or his brow so dark as it was at that moment.
It is essential, Miss Stoner, that you absolutely follow my advice in every aspect.
I shall most certainly do so.
The matter is too serious for any hesitation. Your life depends upon compliance.
I'm in your hands.
Firstly, both my friend and I must spend the night in your room.
Both Miss Stoner and I gazed at him in astonishment.
Yes, let me explain. I believe it's possible to look from this window and down the hill through the trees to the village inn.
Yes, that is the Crown Inn.
Good. Are you certain this window would be visible from there?
Quite certain.
You must lock yourself in this room. Pretend to have a headache and don't come out when your stepfather comes. When you hear him enter his room, open your shutters, undo the latch, and put a lamp on the windowsill to signal us. Once you've done this, leave this room as silently as you can and return to your own bedroom. I have no doubt you'll manage there for one night in spite of the repairs.
Easily.
Leave the rest in our hands.
What will you do?
We'll spend the night in your room and investigate the cause of the whistling noise that has disturbed you.
I believe, Mr. Holmes, that you have already made up your mind about this.
Perhaps I have.
Then for pity's sake, please tell me, what was the cause of my sister's death?
I'd prefer to have better proof before I speak.
At least tell me whether my thought is correct, that she died from a sudden fright?
No, Miss Stoner, I dare say what killed your sister was far more tangible. And now we must leave, for if Dr. Roylott catches us, all is lost. Be brave. If you do what I have told you, you may rest assured we will drive away the danger that threatens you.
Sherlock Holmes and I had no difficulty booking a room on the upper floor of the inn. We could see right up the wooded drive to the inhabited wing of Stoke Moran. At dusk, we saw Dr. Grimesby Roylott returning by carriage, and a few minutes later, we saw a sudden light spring up among the trees as a lamp was lit in one of the sitting rooms.
You know, Watson, I'm a little worried tonight. There is a distinct element of danger.
Would I be of assistance to you?
Yes, your presence may be invaluable.
Then I shall certainly come.
That's very kind of you.
You speak of danger. You must have seen more in those rooms than I.
No, but I may have read a little bit more.
There was nothing unusual but the bell rope, and what purpose could that possibly serve?
You saw the ventilator too?
Yes, but I didn't think it was unusual to have a small opening between two rooms. It was so narrow a rat could hardly pass through it.
I knew that we'd find a ventilator before we even came to Stoke Moran.
Come on.
No, I'm serious. You remember when Miss Stoner said her sister could smell Dr. Roylott's cigars? That suggested at once that there must be a connection between the two bedrooms. It must be a small one, or else it would have been mentioned in the coroner's inquiry. I knew it must be a ventilator.
But what harm can there be in that?
Well, there is at least a curious coincidence of dates. The ventilator is made, a cord is hung, and the lady who sleeps in that bed dies. Does that not strike you as odd?
Perhaps, but I can't see the connections.
Did you observe anything very odd about the bed?
No.
It was bolted to the floor, Watson. Have you ever seen a bed fastened in place like that before?
I can't say that I have.
The lady couldn't move her bed. It was always in the same position relative to the ventilator and the rope. We may call it a rope since it was obviously never meant to be a bell pull.
Good God. I may be starting to see dimly what you are hinting at, Holmes. But then, we're only just in time to prevent some subtle and horrible crime.
Subtle and horrible, yes. When a doctor goes wrong, he makes the worst of criminals. This Dr. Roylott would strike deeply. But I think, Dr. Watson, we may be able to strike deeper still. There will be horrors enough before this night is over. So for goodness' sake, let's have a quiet pipe, enjoy the evening, and turn our minds to something more cheerful for a few hours.
What will Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson find when they receive their candle-lit signal from the windows of Stoke Moran? What has Holmes determined from his investigation, and why does it disturb him so? What will become of Helen, or of her furious stepfather, Dr. Grimesby Roylott? Tune in tomorrow to find out in the thrilling final episode of The Adventure of the Speckled Band here on BeFM Drama, where I'm your host and the voice of Dr. Watson, Joshua Cornwell.